everybody. It's noon, so we're going to go ahead and kick this off. My name is Christy Thompson, and I am with Business Information Solutions, and we just wanted to say thank y'all so much for coming out today. Today, we're going to be talking about how to prepare your business for hurricane season. And right before we kick this off, just a few housekeeping items. We're going to keep everybody muted, but if you would like to ask a question during the presentation, you can always send us a chat or you can do a Q&A. We will try to take as many as we can during the presentation, but we will open it up for Q&A at the very end and answer all your questions then. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce you to the host, Phillip. He is a technologist and entrepreneur, and he specializes in providing technology solutions and security consulting to businesses along the Gulf Coast. So he's been in the IT industry for over 20 years, 600 plus clients. He's the current owner of 5 businesses and a certified information system security professional, as well as his CMMC certification as too. So I'm going to hand this over to Phillip.
Great. And thank you, Christy, for all your work it takes to get these things done. And also want to just thank our audience for coming. I know it's an important time that you're taking with us, and I want to make sure it's very valuable. I'll start just by introducing our guest speaker, Sean Lawless. He is a disaster recovery expert. He is with Axcient. He's the national account manager with those guys. Been there a little over 2 years. He's actually my rep and my friend, and very knowledgeable. He's worked in software sales, primarily with disaster recovery, business continuity, in order to help companies like you guys that are on the call take care of their data. So thank you, Sean, for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. Appreciate the intro there. And yeah, thanks for all the attendees. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to go ahead and just really jump back in. I'll give a little precursor here. Of course, we showed the big hurricane or whatever on the on our advertisement, and we do every year because it's hurricane season, and a hurricane could certainly relate or be classified as a disaster. But really, what we're going to talk about today goes well beyond just hurricanes or anything else. And I want to get business owners thinking correctly about data and about the security of data. And so we're gonna take a little trip today. But first, we'll jump in. We'll talk about some facts that are out there. 33% of folders are not protected in any way. That means that a third of data that needs to be backed up, if you will, is not backed up. That's a statistic for us. The average cost of downtime per minute is $1,400. All right. An incident response team can drastically reduce the cost of a data breach. I think the stat that I've seen on that is about 60 to 65% shorter downtime by doing some things we're going to talk about. And I'm talking about, you don't have to, write a document that you don't understand. I'm talking about getting some people within your company together and writing it on a napkin over lunch one day and having somebody type it up and everybody approve it. And that's kind of the journey I want to take you guys on, because 65% reduction in downtime by doing that, having lunch with your people and writing some stuff down that I'd even help you facilitate if you buy lunch. Another one is 40 to 60. That was a joke, by the way, maybe not a good one, but 40 to 60% of small businesses never reopen after a disaster. Ransomware attack caused an average of 16.2 days of downtime, which I think is oftentimes I hear from clients and they tell me that, well, yeah, I've got a backup, but they really don't. They don't answer all the questions. And it may be you got a backup and that's great, but now they're extorting the data is one problem, meaning they're going to steal it first and then sell it if you don't pay them. So they got you there. But secondly, even if you have your data, is that data able to perform its function in making the business run? Is often not a time frame that's accounted for. And then 93% of companies went bankrupt after a prolonged data loss. So I don't know, Sean, from your experience, what have you seen as far as, relating to some of that? And you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Philip, like these statistics are meant to be scare tactics. Unfortunately, it's just the world we're living in today. One other statistic that's not up here today that I always like to reference on my calls, it's actually 85% of MSPs in 2021. They reported that there was a ransomware attack against one of their SMB customers. Now, whether it's an actual account they're supporting or they're coming to them as a result of needing these services, but the small to medium sized business space is very much targeted. As far as ransomware attacks go, but beyond that, I mean, obviously the region you guys live in, like we're talking about today, with hurricanes and natural disasters, things like that. But I think the biggest point here, and I know we're going to probably dive into it in a couple more slides, is who's at risk, and then not only that, what the strategy is, and then also being able to calculate the cost of being down. That top right one I always like highlighting as well is the average cost of downtime per minute. If you're down minutes, hours, days, weeks, what does that look like to your business? And that's something that's always really eye-opening when we go through these conversations. But yeah, I mean, these are spot on. This is absolutely what we're seeing there as well.
Well, we want to start off with a poll. Let me get it pulled up here. And I want to launch this poll. And basically, do you know how much an hour of downtime would cost your company? I'm going to go over some very simple metrics that every small business owner knows, but I'm curious to know how many people on the call know, yep, that hour just cost me $1,500, whatever, how much does that hour cost you? Which I think, for us, for the market I serve, and the $1,400 a minute is probably above what it is, but I guarantee you it's a lot more than people think. So keep this open just a second longer. Got a couple more people. Y'all guys go and vote. It's okay to not be sure or no, because I'm gonna show you how to get it, and from a business owner perspective, they're gonna really see it, because I ain't gonna flower it up like an accountant would. All right, so not everybody's voted, but we're going to go ahead and end the poll. We'll share the results. So no one knew, and that doesn't surprise me at all, how much an hour of downtime would cost their company. And some people, 38% said that that basically they're not sure, and then 63% said that they don't know. So I want to come up and kind of give just my understanding of the way that I do it. And this is so crazy, but all you people just pick up a piece of paper, a little scrap piece of paper. It don't even have to be big. And I want you to write down your payroll. If you get paid weekly, write that number down. Bi-weekly, we do bi-weekly here. So write down the amount of payroll. Most business owners know what their payroll is. All right. And if that's a bi-weekly number, multiply it by 26, because you got 52 weeks out of the year, so there's 26 pay periods. Multiply those two numbers together. All right. Then let's talk about your profit. Let's just look at what you made, what you took home last year. Add that to this number. And again, this is a ridiculous underestimate of what it is, but add whatever profit you took in last year. I'm going to do mine again just right now, because my payroll, I got those numbers this morning and they've changed a little bit since the last time I've done this. I'm going to do it for my company. So we're looking at just payroll. And then add the profit. And then what you want to do is you want to divide that by 2,080. And that's not a clean number, because that's representing 52 weeks at 40 hours a week. And a lot of people are, a lot of people are, they're working more hours than that or whatever, but still, that's just some basic math that you could put down to say, all right, mine is $976 per hour. And that's something that you could kind of put in your, in your repertoire to understand that, because that is not, there's opportunity costs, there's a million other things that are going into that number. So I bet you could almost double that number and it would be more accurate to what it costs you. So, an hour of downtime is a very, very, very expensive, whenever we're looking at that. So I know that at Axcient they've got a big, formula for that, because I've seen it and used it. But what's your thoughts on that, Sean?
Yeah, I was going to say, like I said, there's a few different ways of looking at it. Oftentimes, having these first conversations, sometimes we'll just look at it as, revenue per hour lost to downtime. So, you take your revenue for the year divided by the work days per year. For example, I think we were doing 270 work days or something, excluding the weekends, divided by the 12 hours per work day, and just calculating revenue time down, not even margin or profit or whatever that may be, and even just looking at the impact that can have on a business as a whole. But yeah, like you said, Phillip, there's a few different ways to look at it. I think starting high level revenues, eye-opening in itself. But then when you take into some of the operational costs and overhead of your business, on average, what are you paying your employees, what your monthly revenue is, what your budget is. And then from there, that can kind of give you an idea of, what revenue is impacted by sales or, whatever it may be. So there's a few different ways to look at it again. But I think, at the end of the day, you realize that being down an hour and being down a couple hours, it adds up really quickly. Yeah. Which really, again, just shows the value of that in the BCDR approach, or the business continuity disaster recovery strategy.
Yeah, for sure. And and there's also, because I've been in situations helping, clients, potential clients, after they've had, say, a horrible ransomware attack or something really, really, really bad happen. They probably lose 5 years of their life. And, as far as the stress wears you out, then all of the implications of, in today's world, it's very difficult. You're not going to be able to be down for 3 or 4 days and not tell your clients why you can't ship goods, why you can't look stuff up, or, why you don't have stuff available. So you're going to take a reputation hit, because, one thing about, computer systems and even ransomware and things of that nature, the way that the culture views it is not like if somebody broke into your car and stole your purse out of your car or something. It's looked upon as kind of shameful. Oh, so you got hacked, huh? Or, oh, you didn't plan for that disaster. It's almost like something that, business owners don't really they don't want to expose. It's definitely not an event that brings about, goodwill towards your business in any way. So this is one of the core fundamentals in determining the ability to know how long and what your tolerance is for downtime. And it's called, the technical term in the backup disaster recovery world is called recovery time objective. And it really is the question that answers that is, how long can your business be down? How long can you sustain not having access to, your systems or whatever? And, if you kind of put it to that formula, at some point, a large portion of companies that are down, I think it's over 10 days, a very large portion of them go out of business because they just can't sustain it. But that's kind of the understanding how much per hour it is. But then whenever you think about, okay, what would it take? If you're in a medical field, we have one of the first incidents, actually a case where there was a loss of life due to ransomware, and that happened at in Mobile, Alabama, at Spring Hill Memorial, where a young baby lost his life because they were hit with ransomware, and their systems that monitored the heart monitors for babies was down because it was encrypted, and a baby lost his life. And now, of course, the woman that, the mother and the family are now suing them, and claiming that this actually, this was the cause of it. So now it gets down to whether it was negligence, and all of a sudden we get into a whole plethora of ideas. But talk to me a little bit from your perspective, Sean, about RTO, recovery time objectives.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Axcient technology that you leveraged through us today, Phillip, it's one of the best in class for business continuity and disaster recovery. So the RTO that we market on our end is 1 hour recovery time objective or less, meaning that your business would be down for 1 hour or less before you get up and running again. Now, again, there's different flavors of that depending on deployments and systems. But what we advertise, what we put into our SLA to IT providers like yourself, is a 1 hour RTO or less. And again, it really comes down to how resilient you guys can be to be back up and running, and what that value brings to the table. I'm sure for those of you guys who just ran through the calculations that Phillip had shared, you're realizing how much 1 hour actually would cost you, and how a backup solution and a business continuity strategy can better align with that. But what we promote here, what we market here at Axcient, is a 1 hour RTO or less. If you have actual physical hardware on site, we're talking near instant uptime.
So, which is really amazing, because I've been in this industry for 21 years, and to the cost of that nowadays is, almost nothing compared to when a solution like that, we always thought, backup, data backup, and now we really have evolved completely to where we're talking about really disaster recovery. Like, how quick can I be back up with all my systems? So, and there is a world of difference. I'll tell a quick story. Literally, today is what, Thursday? Yeah, yesterday I was at a client meeting, new client meeting, and the guy was like, "Yeah, I know we're getting a backup." And so I opened up the server room closet. He has a USB device plugged into the server, and it was labeled Tuesday. So, this was in the morning of Wednesday. So I said, "Well, at least I guess you're taking these off site, right?" "No, we never take it off site." So at some point in the past, I would suspect, having limited information and him not knowing, that they probably had 5 of them called Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and someone was removing them and taking them off site, but that hadn't been done in 3 years. So they've got this device plugged into their computer that supposedly has a backup. There was no backups running on it, because I looked, that they believe has a backup running on it. And worst of all, it's plugged in to the actual server. And just so for everybody to understand, that if you were to get cryptoed, or if someone was to gain access to that machine under that configuration, they would be able to access all of the files on the backup, delete them, encrypt them, or whatever else they want to do. Which kind of leads us to something about what someone should be looking for in a backup solution, and the terminology that Axcient uses is called air gap. Talk to me about what an air gap looks like, and you can use that in relation to that USB drive being plugged into that machine.
Yeah, absolutely. And just before I dive into the air gap, though, one other thing I want to highlight that I know you were touching on there is kind of alluding to, like, the backup concept. It's it's been around forever. We look at it as almost backup's dead. It's all about recovery. Everybody can have a backup solution in place, but can you actually recover from it? It's a whole nother conversation in itself. And the one that concerns me specifically about this scenario where they're populating data on that USB or that network attached storage is, do they have that 3-2-1 backup strategy in place, where the concept around that is essentially having 3 total copies of your data, 2 of which are going to exist on 2 different types of media, and the one being an actual copy of the offsite. Now, it sounds like for that scenario, Phillip, they were just shuffling those drives offsite, every day and rotating them, which, people come and go from a company, and it sounds like that may have fallen off the responsibilities for some of those scenarios, which is, again, concerning in itself. But as far as air gap goes for us, yeah, so this is something that's baked into the Axcient offering as a whole. We look at it as just another security measure, as far as the protection goes. So when you have an Axcient solution in place, this air gap feature, essentially what it does is it's going to have a separation at the Axcient cloud level. So if you have data in the Axcient cloud, historical versions, retention, whatever it may be, and your account were to be compromised, somebody were to go in there and delete the data, or data would be compromised, it might look like that to the bad actor of going in and thinking that he wiped out all your backups. But with our air gap feature, we actually hold on to that backup for an undefined period of time. Now, we don't market that for obvious reasons. We don't want to give them an idea of like what those time release, time dormant attacks could be to accommodate that. But we do tell you that it will be at least a 2-week minimum. And again, this is just a security measure of separating the overall mechanics of that data deletion, where we have your back. It's more that insurance policy, if you will, to have that additional layer. So
yeah. And that's even if I say delete it.
Yeah, exactly.
One of my team said, hey, delete that backup. It's still it physically cannot be deleted for undisclosed period of time that we've negotiated, which is is really where you want to be in an overall solution. The other term that is highly used, I'll jump into this next point here. The other term that is highly used is recovery point objective. And that really, the question for that is, what's the maximum acceptable amount of data loss? Now, let me frame that up a little more, where ultimately that's when was the last good backup that you had? Let's say that traditional backups, you back up at midnight, in the kind of old school way of backing up. You backed up one time a day and it was at midnight, and then you come into work, you start work at 8, you close at 5, and you have an incident where data's lost starting at 12. So we have 12 noon. So ultimately we have 4 hours worth of actual data loss. This is very very good, like using that. What's the cost of downtime costs you? You can plug that number in to those number of hours, because all of that work that you've done has been lost. So you're going to have to recreate that work. You're going to have to do that. So that'll kind of, that's another important aspect. And I'll throw one shade of nuance into all of this, because when I go out and meet with just standard business owners in this marketplace, I'm like, well, how long could you do without your QuickBooks, without your Sage, without your, whatever product they're keeping their books in? They're like, oh man, we could go 2 weeks without that. And then the next question I ask is, and that's not a true statement, and I know it, and they may think they know it, but I don't believe they even know it. But I'll say, well, do you do your pay? Who does your payroll? Oh, we do. And yeah, we get paid weekly. We cut payroll every Thursday. Well, no, that means you can't do without your system, past the Thursday for sure. So we've already, sometimes you got to ask better questions to get, better answers, and you got to kind of think through some of this, and that's kind of where we're heading. What about recovery point objective from an Axcient point of view, Sean?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we market and we advertise with our recover solution specifically, so that'd be like the server and the workstation backup, is we can back up as often as 15 minutes. So again, that would be up to you guys having those conversations with Phillip and his team on the frequency of your backups, but our software allows you to back up as often as every 15 minutes from a recovery point objective. And I know, obviously different audience on this call. Some have more of a technical background than others, but one other thing I do just want to touch on is the overall architecture of our technology. We operate on what's called a chain-free technology, which really helps our RPO be more efficient, because we don't have any dependencies on a first initial full or the previous image. There's no one single dependency. Every backup that we take is natively virtualizable, if you will, and accessible. So there's not that one single point of failure. Whereas, other companies in this space, if they lost their first initial full, it's going to impact all the future snapshots going forward, which again impacts the RPO.
For sure. And I'll take a stab at that. That's a little bit technical, but if you were to think about, if you started on let's just think about a real chain, and the difference between Axcient, which is, it's a really big difference, is that it's not dependent on those links in those chains to back up to your data, whereas a traditional type of these solutions, they are required, like in order to get your full backup, you have to have every chain functioning correctly and properly. And at times, those during backup situations, there's something that could corrupt one of those chain links, if you will. And Axcient came up with a way to not be dependent on those chains, which is really, would I be correct in saying that no one else, that's a patented solution, and that's no one else is doing that, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I think like anything in this space, people try and use it as a buzzword, but as far as our knowledge goes, it's a patented technology to us. We're the only vendor in this space that has this capability. So yeah, it's, if I'm having conversations with anybody from a technology standpoint, this is one of the first items we're going to talk about. And like I said, it usually leads to a lot of happy ears because, if they've been using a previous solution, they will know about the experiences of having to consolidate image chains and the time that it can take. And again, I don't want to get too much into the technical weeds, but sure, just something to keep in mind that, it's a huge advantage for us, especially when it comes to recovery point objective.
Yep. And I want to talk about just really what it looks like. And and of course, we'll share all these slides with everyone on the call. And this is something that you guys need to do as business owners. I would be happy to help you perform this. And this does not need to be a big feat, but you need some form of disaster recovery plan. And I want to walk you through the steps of things that are within a disaster recovery plan. And the first of which is the location and the value of your data, which is very, very, very important, not only from a recoverability standpoint, but really also from a security standpoint. And with the work from home aspect that everyone has kind of, first forced into, and now I think it's going to be with us for a while, at least for sure, maybe forever, is now all of a sudden we have data getting spread further and further away. And one of the things I like about Axcient, one of the reasons why I've been a partner with them, Sean, I know you've only been with Axcient for 2 years, but literally I've probably been a partner for, you probably could look, but I don't know, 12 years, whatever. Yeah. But the beauty of it is that they have the solution, the total solution for even managing that backup that's at your house on your, on a BYOD device kind of thing. So, but first you got to know where all of your data is. And if you think about it, you got to think about it from, a geographic location. And then next you need to think about it from a value of your data. And when you start to do evaluation on your data, you got to think of it in kind of two different channels at first, for sure. The first channel is what is the value to the problem that you're solving as a business owner? If it's a AutoCAD file because you're an architect or an engineer, there's a value that goes into that data based off of several factors. One might be the overall, plan that you're working on, or the contract that you're working on. Then it's the number of hours, and usually, engineers make a pretty high per hour wage. So that CAD file starts to go into a pretty, the cost goes way up on it. And then secondly, you need to think of it from a security aspect and from a personal identifiable information. Does this data have anyone in any employee within the company, my client's data that could be deemed as, personal identifiable information or information that you need to protect? So that's step one. And you can do that, on on a piece of paper and start thinking about where your people are working from, what files they have access to, yada, yada, yada. Did anything you want to add on that, Sean?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple things, and I don't know if you want me to touch on security scorecard now or later.
Yeah, jump in there because yeah, and you're right, man. Because I'm thinking more from the business owner perspective about where your data is being kept, but you got to think about where it's being stored, how it's getting there. Is the data encrypted at rest? Is it encrypted in transit? Yeah. So yeah, please weigh in on from a storage facility what you need to be looking for.
Of course. Yeah. So we have 4 data centers that we use across Axcient, 2 of them being in the United States, 1 in Canada, and 1 in Amsterdam or the Netherlands. So for you guys being in the Southeast, we have a location in Atlanta, Georgia. It's an SSAE 16 Type 2 SOC certified. So it goes through all those compliance requirements, the HIPAA certification, so on. And one thing I always like to highlight is obviously that these data centers, they're strategically located in the disaster safe regions based off what we're seeing on our end. And then the reliability of it as a whole. So we do 99.999, so 3 nines at the end there, of reliability within our data center. So what this translates to is it's actually less than 5 minutes average downtime per year across our whole infrastructure. So pretty significant. I mean, as you continue to add more nines, obviously it gets less and less, but 3 nines is certainly of very high significance when you consider, minutes over the course of a year. So that's, from a compliance standpoint, like you said, data's encrypted at rest and in transit 256 AES. I'm not sure if that rings a bell for anybody on the call, but again, something we have there. And then one other thing I always like to highlight, and I can pass along, Phillip, you probably have the blog post already, but I'll send it over to you after we hang up here if you want to share with anybody on the call. There's a company called Security Scorecard, and what they do is they basically use data that's publicly available to them through different open source feeds, and they take more of that outside in hacker perspective to a company's cybersecurity posture. So they've done cybersecurity scores for like over 1 million plus companies at this point in time, and that's 1 million and counting. And basically what the score does, it's a moment in time capture of what their security profile looks like. Now, we like to share out a slide, and it'll be in the blog post as well, as us compared to some of the other security, business continuity, disaster recovery vendors out there. Now, our last score that we had back in March, we actually scored an A, and had an overall 98. Had an overall score of a 98. And again, this was categorized into like 10 different risk factors, but they look at 70 plus different scenarios. But basically, we're an A. There's a few other vendors that are B's, and then there's like C's and D's. And, the one thing that I really took away from looking at this is, for example, those companies that received a B rating, they're 2.6 times more likely to suffer a data breach than those with an A rating. And then those with a C rating, they're 4.3 times more likely to suffer a data breach compared to those with an A rating. So when it comes to overall security, resiliency, and, just our overall security posture as a whole, it's something that I always like to touch on to give you guys peace of mind. Obviously it's reputation on Phillip's end as a IT service provider, but it's also, for you guys downstream, your clients and, who you're working with, it's a big reputation hit. So that's always something we like to kind of boast about, and, are obviously very proud of our standing on that. So,
yep, for sure. That's and that is really a big, it's that security scorecard. We're going to see a lot more of that in the industry because of when we think of supply chain management, we see it all over right now because there's shortages of this and that, but each company touches other companies, and from that perspective, it's very difficult to know the cyber hygiene of a company. And this is what that security scorecard does. It kind of gives you a view into your vendors or people that you're working with. We actually have an A too. and we've worked hard to get that because it's pretty critical. I mean, it's pretty hard. I mean, as far as pretty detailed because of all the ways they look at you. So, but that's good.
Yeah, I think it was like 79 different cybersecurity issues, and they categorized them into 10 different factors. So yeah, I'll share that article, Phillip, if you want to pass that on to anybody on the call.
Yeah, for sure. We certainly will.
Awesome.
All right. The going on with the disaster recovery plan. This is what I want you guys to get out of this call, is to be able to put together some form so that you're going to be, restore, twice as fast, 65% faster from a disaster. But really, you have to then look at the criticality of each assets. And I'll give you an example. Let's say, email being one asset that you're looking at, email, communication on phone, your ordering system, your accounting system, your website. You need to break your company down into the components it takes to function, get them on a piece of paper, and then have a discussion about, in order for us to serve the core function of our business, we need these assets to be available. And that is something that it's really not that difficult for most business owners. If you got the guy who's running the company, he knows what it takes to run that company. You need to get that on a piece of paper, and you need to basically weigh them out. Tier 1 is something that absolutely 100% you have to have in order to be effective at solving the problem that your company solves. Tier 2 is something that would be impacted. You'd have a pretty big dent in your overall ability to serve at peak performance, but you could do without that. And then Tier 3 would be something that is that you could do without for an extended period of time, and you would define those time frames. Usually, I like to start with on a daily basis, then a 3-day look, a 5-day look, and then a 10-day look. But I'll help you guys with that if y'all have questions. Sean, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think honestly, Phil, that's where you guys come into play, and you can help design those plans accordingly. And like you said, to have different ideas of what priorities need to take where with certain machines, certain data, so on. So it's certainly a good idea to outline that, get a better understanding of what the strategy is, and then just it helps with the overall devising of your plan as a whole, because that way you have support across it from all different facets of business. You're identified, you can have a better understanding of what needs to be done. So yeah, I think, like you said, you guys are the experts on that. That's where they leverage you for as the trusted advisor for all things technology. And I know you guys know how to drop those plans well.
I have seen so many people not do these types of steps, and they're spending a ton of money on things that really have a low impact, and they could reallocate that budget to to more focus in the areas that have the true criticality, that are critical assets, and they would have such a better overall solution rather than looking at it at the broad. You need to break it down into pieces and weigh it so that you're allocating budget to that. And I have a format that I follow that I think can do that pretty easily. All right, here's another aspect is you guys have got to have a team. It can't be the owner a lot of times. I mean, I know I've been that guy and I got all that stuff in my head and I know what I'm going to do and all that kind of stuff. Well, really to be successful, you're going to need to figure out how to get that those responsibilities as well as the insight from other people within the organization. You have to 100% have a team so that it's not all residing on you, where there's a balance of that, because you're going to get more insight as well as you're going to get a much faster overall you'll get a more insight, which will make a better plan, which will give you a faster recovery overall. So put together a team to do that. And for the sake of time, I want to be sure we let you guys out of here right at 1. But disaster recovery plan, the next step is a definition of what constitutes a disaster. Is it when, what is it that triggers, what is I call it a trigger, that triggers you to go into what we call disaster mode. And we have it for us because we serve so many businesses right here on the coast. And I'll use hurricanes as an example. We have it whenever we have a storm within a 2-day window. We're in the cone of the hurricane, and we're in that, and it's going to make landfall within 2 days. We send a team out of the area so that we can serve them, serve our clients remotely. Because as you know, a hurricane could hit in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and it could wipe out, Pensacola and the east side of Mobile really bad. But yet, if you got out into Mississippi, went on out into Dothan, or you went on, a little bit on there, they're really not affected that much. So we have to have a team that is readily available to continue to support our other clients outside the area in the event that our main office was damaged or or whatever. What's your thoughts, Sean, on try to put a little more flesh on that, what constitutes a disaster for me?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you said, that oftentimes goes back to, what you guys have documented and, have a better idea of what relevant information is needed, and asking those questions of strategy. One other thing I'll say, as far as just pulling information and coming up with this plan is like, I've seen one of the questions, and the critical question that people ask is like, if things were to happen, what are you willing to pay, whether it be for recovery or willing to pay for, a ransom as a whole. But I mean, you guys are in that neck of the woods where, is Jim Cantori still the big weather guy down your way, Phil?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. If he shows up, wherever he shows up, it's probably going to be,
it's probably going to be a disaster, right?
Yeah, it's going to be messy.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, having partners and, the Gulf Coast and, different parts of Florida, even the Southeast, it's just, something that, if he's coming along, it's an area of concern. And, obviously, Phil, you do the right thing by having the teams in the field to, be able to take on and prioritize as those come up. But yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways to look at these things, disasters, both, Mother Nature, as well as, the actual cybersecurity layers of it.
Yeah, for sure. One other thing I'll make mention of, it's a big, and I know there's some white paper on it I could share with anybody, but, we're talking about hurricanes, but in Joplin, Missouri, oh gosh, trying to think of his name. I'm gonna keep talking. You're gonna think of the actual guy that owns the MSP, but he had, whenever that tornado went through there and just absolutely devastated. But he has a fascinating story about that, because I mean, it destroyed that town. I mean, completely. And he served only, it's an MSP like me, and he serves only medical space up there. But the things that Axcient did in order to restore data for those people, I mean, it is absolutely amazing, the effort and I'll see if I can find that, because I bet there's a white paper on it. But to hear the guy that owns the company, his name?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if that's Complete Technology Services or if it's Proactive Technology Group.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of his company. I know him well. I've heard him tell it, and I just can't think of his name. But yeah, man, really a fascinating story. But not one bit of data was lost from any of his clients. And if he shows you the pictures of even his office, I mean, it looks like somebody took a bulldozer and just turned that whole city upside down. But anyway, for time's sake, better keep moving. But that's a big testament to Axcient, actually, and all that. I mean, they were like meeting people at gas stations, getting backup servers put in place. I mean, it was really is a great story. Also, another thing is that not only do you need to have a team, but you also need to have some way of disseminating the information throughout the company during the disaster. You need to have people like what I was talking about, like we put people outside of the area in a secure facility where they're going to have internet and all the services that we need to serve our clients. You need to get people dispersed out accordingly based on the threat or whatever's happening. You got to get them moved outside of this area. And then the next part of that is you need to have some form of communication process so that you're able to be able to have a set way that you're going to communicate. Are you going to use texting? Or are you going to use phones? Of course, we know that a lot of times for us in a hurricane, you can get a text through, but you can't get a phone call through. You need to think through those things of how you're going to communicate. And then you also need to set default sync up times to where you have the ability to say, all right, we're going to get together by some means, and everybody that's plays a part in this is going to communicate at every 4 hours, and we're going to get together on a Zoom call, a Teams call, whatever, to figure out so that you're able to have that free flow of information, because ultimately the goal here is that we want to make this disaster get over as quickly as possible. And communication and how that restoring things in the conditions that are happening, that needs to be communicated. What's your thoughts on that, Sean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you said, having that outlined, identified of who can take reign, have different teams communicating. That's going to be a huge part of the process as a whole. And the biggest thing I can say, and I know there's a different frameworks and different outlines for all these, but the biggest thing we always do here is just over communicate. That you can't do enough of it. So I think it's all part of the communication process and just making sure everybody's on the same page.
In our process, one of the factors that we had in it was actually who had families, like how big was the family. And some of my guys were single and are single, and some of them have just they have just a wife, they don't have a bunch of kids. So whenever we were figuring out who was going to be responsible for what, we took all of those things into consideration. And some people had family that would, be, if you went to the east of us, some had families if you went to the west of us, so that they had a good place that they knew they could stay in case hotels were booked up. So there's a lot of little nuances in there. But again, once you get to talking and you get to thinking, it really it lays itself out. And I think that's, again, it's just important for everybody to get that done. And then finally, or not finally, but almost finally, we got to have a criteria for determining when the disaster's over. And is it when the office is back up and open? Is it when the storm's out of the area by 2 days? Is it when power's back on? Is it is it when all your systems are back up and running? But you have to have some means to say, okay, we're out of disaster mode and we're back into, everything's up, everything's functional, and we're out of what we call the disaster phase, and we're back into normal operations. And there could be even varying degrees of that as you go from full-blown disaster mode to full-blown recovered mode, but there could be some varying degrees where, again, if you have your assets classified as to, okay, maybe we're at, orange whenever we have all of our tier 1 assets recovered and working, and we're at yellow whenever the tier 2 assets and the tier 1 are up, and we're full green when all 3 tiers are up and going. So again, you put that together so that you can, manage it and, when you hit those milestones. Sean, anything you want to mention to that?
Yeah, I think, like you said, the criteria is going to be different for every business, every vertical. If the power's been out and you're a dentist office, you're probably not doing any work that day because you don't have unless you get the generators up and going. But it's really dependent on each use case, and I think communicating those to Phil and his team of at what point do you feel like you're there and you kind of out of the weeds a little bit, I think is always something to do. And it also goes back to the criticality of each asset and your data as a whole. So that can put different spins and different influence on, when it's over and, when the light should go green and you're up and going again.
All right, I want to just talk a little bit about Axcient right now and what we call virtual office.
Sure.
Talk to me a little bit about what virtual office is.
Yeah, absolutely. So virtual office is, something that we include within our licensing model. It's really designed and enabled to help, partners and you guys as clients stay, proactive, keep your systems running, have that data always accessible. So essentially it's virtualizing in our cloud. So it's a cloud failover feature, and it basically allows you to just run as if your business were up in the Axcient cloud, to continue that production. So not having the impacts. And this goes back to that RTO of, that 1 hour RTO or less. When we're talking about RTO, we're talking about actually virtualizing your business in the Axcient cloud. So standing up those servers in our data center. And there's a few different ways to access it. Obviously Phil's team, they're a partner. They've been doing it for a while. They can come up with the best strategy to access that data, but that's all, part of, our one of the features within our product.
Yeah, I think it's incredible because literally, you can start that machine up. It's really a feat for technology because the way that data has traditionally been stored, it's been stored in kind of like real slow, low energy use facilities where the data was there, but it didn't have the power to actually run the imaged server, and all that transition. Just because I've been on the partner council with Axcient, I think for like 10 years, and I've seen the evolution of what's possible. But literally, if your server blows up in the closet, we can start it up in the cloud and either do a VPN or give you remote access to that server very quickly. And that is, to me, a huge whenever we're, like clients, whenever they understand that, that's a big deal. So that's one big feature that I think is very important. And then, kind of next, we'll talk about just the testing of it, doing what they call a tabletop exercise, where because during those tabletop exercises, you're gonna refine things. You're gonna come up with better ways. Like I would do that probably annually at least, where you just sit down and you talk about your disaster recovery. Again, you could have a little lunch and learn inside your office and, bring in some sandwiches and everybody sit around and let's just go over our plan. Let's talk about, has the criticality of assets changed? Has the overall infrastructure where our data lives, has it changed? Like for a lot of people, it changed when COVID hit. And I bet a lot of people haven't even really considered that. So again, you need to have these tabletop exercises where you go over basically the points that we've made in this. That would be the outline, if you will. And then you fill out the other stuff as you go along, and then you just sit down and go over it and discuss it and make sure that you got the right people on the team. A lot of people, the average, I think, American stays at a job, 38 months now or something. So, you're likely to have had some people change out. So you're going to have to reallocate responsibilities and all that. So you got to test it to make it valuable. Anything you want to add to that, Sean?
Yeah, so going back to that virtual office piece, that can also be used as a testing strategy as well. So going back to what Phillip said, if you guys wanted to work through his team to identify, hey, I want to do quarterly or yearly testing on the environment in the Axcient cloud. I'm sure that's a project that his team could work with you or take on. And then beyond that, just another thing that I always like to highlight is more so that, peace of mind that's built into our system. And again, it varies whether you're doing appliance-based or you're going direct to cloud, but it's our feature called Auto Verify. And this is a default feature as far as the Axcient solution goes. But basically it's aimed at every day, it's going to automatically virtualize the most recent backup and the recovery points for each of those systems on those backups. And then it's going to do a number of checks on like the overall bootability of the machine, the operating system health, if there's any data corruption, and just the overall like file system and application integrity. So again, that's done. I believe it's the last backup of the previous day, and then it will have what's called like a verification, or that auto verification showing you that it met all those marks. And again, that varies depending on appliance based versus direct to cloud on how frequently that's run. But again, it's another thing that again goes a long way from just overall testing, peace of mind, and just better all visibility into the recoverability of the data, I guess.
That's right, because it's not about backup, it's about recoverability.
Exactly.
It would be the equivalent of someone actually starting that image every day and reporting, because that's really what happens. And it basically is automated, but it puts a ticket in if there's some problem with that image so that it didn't start correctly, puts a ticket in on our dashboard that we resolve. So that's really, really a great point as far as like there's some built-in testing that's taking place with the actual data that's at the Axcient. All right, so let's talk just a brief, just some general tips, just a couple minutes worth of tips about how to keep operations running even if your office is not acceptable. We kind of touched on the Axcient Cloud, or the virtual office as it's called now, where you can run things there. What about there's so many other tools that are out there and readily available. The Microsoft 365 platform has really come so far in being able to have the ability to, do a lot of that lifting from a laptop or from a home office or whatever, and actually able to do it securely if configured correctly. And one other note on that is that we don't want to forget that like the Microsoft 365 does not guarantee backups. They're not a backup of your Teams or of your email or of your OneDrive or your SharePoint. They don't back that up. So that's another product that we use from Axcient is I forgot what it's called now, Sean. I called it Cloud.
Sorry. I was muted out. Yeah, it's X360 Cloud. Yep. So. Yeah. A few different layers of data protection that we do. Obviously, the bulk of what we've been talking about today has been our Recover offering, but X360 Cloud, that would be our cloud-to-cloud backup of things like Office 365 mail, SharePoint, OneDrive. We also do Google Workspace as well. So again, something to consider if you guys have data that resides there. I mean, we could even share some statistics about the email security threat vector as a whole, and phishing attacks and so on. But Microsoft in their service agreement officially recommends that they're more of an application. They're worried about uptime. They're not necessarily worried about overall data integrity, and they suggest that you use a third-party vendor for backing up their mail in SharePoint, OneDrive. So I can get that over to you as well, Phil, if you want to pass along to anybody on the team.
Sure. All right, we're going to pop open our last poll, and it is: could your business survive a disaster? If something really major happened, if the roof came off the building, could you be back up and running within 5 days? Could you, could you be up and going and, really be, or what functionality would you have? What does it look like for you as a company? How confident are you in your ability to survive a disaster? We'll let that run just a little bit longer. All right, so we've got a 50-50 split. We've got half the people saying yes and half the people saying I'm not sure. Nobody's want to say no. I mean, that would be that would be actual negligence if something were to happen. If you answered no to that and something bad happened, you would be negligent in your duty. So not everybody's confident in their ability to do a disaster. Well, for everybody on the call, we're going to wrap up here. I would love to have a conversation with you guys. I absolutely love taking companies through this, and at no charge, we'll spend an hour together doing that disaster recovery plan. But we'll also do more for you where we're gonna look overall at your email setup. Right now, I've been focused heavily on email because of the amount of risk. It's probably 85% of a small business's risk, and most people's email is not set up correctly. So, but I'll also throw in, setting up your email or looking at your email to make sure it's set up right. We'll do a simulated phishing attack for all your people just to see how good they are at spotting that. We'll look at the Office 365 security review, as well as the cyber liability insurance assessment, and look over some governance documents. In today's business world, there's at least 8 documents that you need to have your staff sign. I'll provide those documents for you, as well as look over what you got, and then we'll also look over that disaster recovery plan review. All right. Christy, any questions from anyone?
Yes, so we had one come in. Should you tell all of your clients about a data breach in the communication process of the disaster recovery plan?
I tell you what, here's my take on that, and I will let Sean weigh in. If it were me, every one of you guys should have a cyber liability insurance policy, and you should have the phone number. There's a phone number of who you call and the email of who you email to is immediately when a security incident's happened. You need to even train your team on who it is that if they see something funny, who they need to respond to. But I'm not saying you want to lie at all, but I'm saying the timing and the amount of information and how it's put out there will be handled by that team that's handling that for the cyber liability insurance. Because if you understand how insurance works, ultimately you paid them to take that risk for you, and they have a full team. They've got public relations. If you got the right policy, they've got public relations people on staff, and let their attorneys dictate what you say when you say it. And again, I'm not saying that you withhold information, because by law, depending upon how many records and a lot of different things, and based off of locality, like if you're in Alabama or Florida or whatever, dictate as to who you tell and when and what. But you let that team do it for you, because it's going to be it's going to be definitely a hit that your reputation is going to take on a company, and you want to do that in the most advantageous way, if you will. Sean, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on all of it there. I mean, I think every scenario is going to be a little bit different. I don't know if there's one answer to blanket across everything, but at the end of the day, if you have those policies in place, that's going to keep you the most protected, and again, leverage that team to do so. I think different verticals, different compliances, there's different, and again, I can't speak to all of them about whether you disclose that or not, but I think like you said, Phillip, that it's probably the best path is to contact that insurance policy forum and go that route, and disclose it to them first, because at the end of the day, it's your reputation.
Yep, 100%. Yeah. For the sake of time, Christy, I really don't want to keep people over. So no more questions right now, unless you just got something you think will be really quick.
Nope, that works.
All right, cool. Well, I'd like to thank Christy for all her work in putting this together. I'd like to thank Sean for joining us and giving his insight, as well as really the whole Axcient team and their focus and their commitment to doing it right. And I appreciate that, as well as everyone that came. I want to thank y'all for spending the time. If you'd like to, have a conversation beyond where we are, you can email security@AskBIS to take us up on that offer. Or of course, most of you guys, you could reach out and just speak with me directly. So thanks to everyone, and I hope you have a good, safe afternoon.